the public or to the users within the government. ESD is also known as Alternative Delivery Initiatives or as Alternative Program Delivery. Using ESD, providers ranging from public agencies to private sector, companies will be able to provide services or products to Canadian and the government while making the best use of scarce resources. Next. So, I have an example to this alternative service delivery. Like for example, the program of the government. Yung programa po ng gobyerno hindi po fixed or forever because it keeps on changing times. Hindi po effective yung proyekto. So, just like po sa po project po ng DENR, undertaken purely or exclusively by the government. However, after validation and assessment, it came out that is there a need for private sector participation to effectively attain the objective of the program? Like now, PO, we have a people's organization po, ma'am. The role of the government is just to evaluate and validate the program, since the government is one who paying for the implementation of the activity. And also, alternative means a changes sa mga plano, which is the one purpose is to have effective delivery of services to the stakeholder or clientele. So I guess that's only my understanding about alternative service delivery. So we go on the background of it. Alternative service delivery is not a new idea. The national government has previously transferred airports to local authorities, hospitals to provinces, and northern programs of territorial. Okay. Territorial governments, however, government organizations are now giving alternative service delivery increased consideration under program review. Every government organization has analyzed its operation to determine what service it should continue to provide and what services it should change, discontinue, or transfer to another organizations. The objective is to make government more effective, affordable, and responsive to clients. This can be done in the National Public Service focuses more clearly on its policy making and strategic planning functions while permitting a variety of alternative arrangements for implementing programs and delivering services to our clientele and stakeholders. The government will continue to identify opportunities of alternative service delivery even after programs review ends. So, and now go to the example of our alternative service delivery. ESD can take many forms of each with its own potential advantages, disadvantages, and challenges, ranging from devolving services to other levels of government or to the private sector, to creating crown corporation or service agencies in the public sector. In the interest of simplicity, however, most ESD can be grouped under one of three forms, namely a new reorganization, second, another level of government or the private sector. A new reorganization is normally created out of an existing department to increase accountability, autonomy, or flexibility. Hello? Hello?
Hi.
Hi.
A new reorganization, an example to this is the organization undertaken by the then Ministry of Natural Resources, of which are three bureaus, namely Bureau of Forestry, Bureau of Mines, and Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources to what is today known as Department of Environment and Natural Resources, wherein the delivery of services and programs can be achieved by the streamlining of specific programs, projects, and activities. That is my example in a new reorganization based on my own understanding. Next, delivery by another level of government is normally undertaken to clarify roles and responsibilities and to eliminate overlap and duplication. Example to this is the downloading of some national functions to different local government units in order to attain an effective and efficient performance, such as issuance of permit to small-scale mining, I think, like sand and gravel. Maintenance and operation of integrated social forestry or the ISF. So yan. And the third is the delivery by the private sector. Is normally pursued with the national government no longer needs to provide a service or product at a reasonable cost from the private sector. Normally, the government expects the private sector to achieve efficiency and productivity gains through such means as investing in technology or increasing competition. And the example of this is the privatization of some electric companies and the selling of Petron Gasoline Corporation to private companies for more flexibilities and competitiveness. Because before po, sa time ni Marcos, di ba po, yung Petron Gasoline is owned by the, or managed by the government. But now, it was privatized. So I think that's my understanding with this topic or this. And now we go to the ESD process. Many parties can identify the opportunities for ESD in a number of ways. The government identifies suitable programs on services through structured exercise like program review. Opportunities may also be identified by other levels of government, by representative of the private sector, or by employee groups. Once an opportunity is identified, the department responsible will fully explore the potential benefits and costs. Once opportunity is confirmed, the ESD may be implemented through legislation, example by creating a new agency, through negotiation, example by devolving a program to another level of government, or through competition, by seeking private sector suppliers. The actual step involved in implementing ESD will be dictated largely by the size of undertaking and by the eventual delivery structure selected. Generally, the process is likely to be much more complex if a new organization is being established than if an existing organization assumes responsibility for delivery. For the sake of simplicity, however, any ESD initiative can be considered to consist of three basic stages: planning, transition, and post-transition. So, during planning stage, when a program, service, or activity has been identified as an ASD candidate, a business case is prepared to demonstrate that the proposal is consistent with the government's objectives and desired outcomes. These may include clarifying roles and responsibilities, reducing overlap or duplication, or improving cost effectiveness. In case where another level of government or a private sector may be assuming delivery responsibility, A negotiating strategy or position is developed setting out the most desirable and the minimum acceptable outcomes. Once the proposal has been approved in principle, likely by the cabinet in case of the large initiatives, or by the department executive committee for smaller ones, and the potential new employer has been identified. Detailed planning will address a variety of issues. This may include the mechanism of identifying public service employees who will be offered position in the new organization, the administrative costs such as those related to pension and pay, the labor regime and will likely apply, and the possible application of successor rights. That is the planning stage. By the end of the transition stage, the organization should have reached an agreement in principle with the new employer detailing the human resource framework and the plan for transferring employees, completed an assessment of workforce adjustment implication, and obtained final approvals. And during the post transition stage, when the new employer has had sufficient time to carry out its responsibilities, a review will ensure that the terms of and condition of the transfer agreement and all outstanding human resource responsibilities have been met. Okay, proceed to the treatment. Treatment of employees subject to alternative service delivery. It's Each ESD initiative should reflect consideration of the government's principles for managing human resource in such situation. Fair and equitable treatment of employees. Second, value for money and affordability. And the last is the maximization of employment opportunities for public service employees. And sample to this, like no laying of employees. Kasi, however, is the need arise, affected employees are covered with the insurance and are guaranteed to receive benefits on his or her number of years in service. So that's all my sample. And I have also here the summary of it. Alternative service delivery. ESD provides an opportunity to make government more effective, affordable, and responsible to clients. ESD can take many forms ranging from devolving services to another levels of government or to the private sector to creating corporation of service agencies in the national public sector and can be used to achieve a number of objectives, ranging from eliminating overlap or duplication to benefiting from the ability of the private sector to realize efficiencies through technology. When an opportunity of ESD is identified, the department responsible will fully explore the potential benefits and costs. Once an ESD initiative is approved, an implementation plan will be developed to carry the project through the planning, transition, and post-transition stages, and to ensure that employees' interests and concerns are fully considered. The parties to ESD will honor the government human resource principle to the best of their ability. Given the objectives of the initiative, the business case, and the uniqueness of marketability of the workforce adjustment directive ensure that all public service employees, both those invited to join a new employer and those who whom no continuing employment is available, are treated equitably no matter what from the ESD meeting. Okay, I think that's all about my topic, alternative service delivery. Yun lang po, ma'am. I think na-end na po yung sa akin. Now, may I request Ma'am Gian for the next topic or issue to be tackled?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Rosel.
Si Ma'am Rosalie pa.
Okay, ma'am.
Si Ma'am Rosalie. Okay, sorry. Ma'am Rosalie, you're the next reporter.
Yes, ma'am. Hello, ma'am Z. Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I am Rosalie Lumanta Duhali and enrolled ko as Rosalie Lumanta gihapon kay wala pa na-change akong status since married na ko, Duhali na akong surname karon. So I will be reporting advantages and disadvantages of alternative service delivery. So here we have the advantages of ASD. So as we all know, an advantage to one observer may be a disadvantage to another. So this list of advantages is taken from the Western Michigan University through their Journal of Sociology and Social Welfare. So dito na ko ni siya gikuha nga list. So number 1, we have cost effectiveness. So the cost effectiveness is the degree to which something is effective or productive in relation to its cost. So since the government will only entrust money to any organization, in which many case to a private sector. We all know private sector is more detailed in terms of providing services because they are earning to survive. Dili man na magsalig og subsidy ang private. Maningkamot jud na to stand on its own. Therefore, if naagi entrust sa ilaha from the government, mahimo siya nga cost effective. So worthwhile siya or convenient ang services nga ma-deliver. Next is accurate cost determination. Private sectors and other organizations that will be entrusted by the government will have accurate cost determination, since it will be reporting to the government every details of the expenses spent. Next is administrative efficiency. There will be improved program and administration control, since managers and CEOs can easily control its staff and employees, since it has only a smaller coverage than of the government. So na siya efficiency in as to administration. Next, we have better service coordination. Ika nga, 2 brains is better than 1, di ba? So this implies in ASD, where the government and the agency entrusted coordinates to each other for better programs and services. Hence, there will be enhanced quality of services. Next, we have more responsive to immediate needs. It is one of the advantages because, as I stated earlier, private organizations have smaller coverage than of the government. So, they can immediately respond to the needs of the people. It is also because the process of a private organizations is not as long as the process of that government. So, simply, mubura siya kaysa sa government. So, mas dali siya i-meet ang needs sa mga tao. So, next we have ease of altering or terminating programs. As mentioned a while ago, the process of private organizations is not as long as that of the government. So, it is easier to alter or terminate programs. If moingon ang president or CEO nga stop na ang mao nga program, if nakita niya nga mao'y preferable sa company, then ma-stop ra niya dayon. So naa siya program flexibility. Before I sige. Next na lang. Next, we have more effective use of talent and human resources. So, in private, there is a full control of its employees because the manager or CEO is the boss of the company. However, in the government, there will be no full control because the boss is the people of the state. In addition, there will be improved utilization of voluntary expertise and volunteers, since private agencies focuses on the skills and capabilities of its employees, and there will be flexible use of personnel where the boss can demand easily to do something that would show off one's talent. Okay, next we have avoids political patronage. Political patronage, as it defines, it is the hiring of a person to a government post based on partisan loyalty. It is a practice in which a political party, after winning an election, gives government civil service jobs to its supporters, friends, and relatives as a reward for working toward victory and as an incentive to keep working for the party. So kay private organization man, walay political patronage ang mahitabo. The power to control appointments to office or the right to privileges will be avoided. Next, we have freeze public resources to service other important needs. So, if the government will only entrust to the specific organization the services, so dili siya ma-overload and mas daghan ang programs or services nga mahatag kay dili man ang government alone nga resources ang ma-involve. Kumbaga, na ay sharing of responsibilities to the service of the public. In that case, we can say there will be a desirable mix of public and private services. So that's all nga akong nakita sa advantages sa ASD. Next, we will proceed to the disadvantages of ASD. So, number 1, we have difficult to ensure standards and adequate coverage. Why? Why is it difficult? So, it is difficult in monitoring performance and output result in alternative services since the service provided is not directly seen and supervised by the government itself. Since private man siya, makompromise sad ang standards if limited lang ang funds. Kaysa government, mo choose man og lower cost, usually, generally. But as we know, we pay for the quality of the services. Mausab nga daghan ang private nga nag-prosper, maski mahal, kay mangita man ang tawo og quality. So, if limited lang ang funds nga ihatag sa government, we can say that services will be on lower standards, or shall we say, substandards ang mahatag. Next disadvantage, we have loss of public control and accountability. So sa government, transparency is in the law, and as much as possible, the public knows the details of expenses. Ika nga, you must know where your taxes go, diba? So, but since sa private na siya, dili ta ka-expect ngayon ana ka transparent. Private institution has different service system. Some of that service may be not effective and client seems not satisfied, and with that services dili satisfied ang people. Dayon mawala ang trust sa mga tao. Kay in government, kinahanglan gihold gi-care man nato ang public trust. Unlike sa private, so mawala siya. Number 3, we have undermines role of public agency. When implementing the alternative service, some roles from the government employees are undermined since percent from their work was taken by the private sector. So it lessened the effectiveness, power, or ability of the public servant either gradually or instantly. Next, we have loss of protection from the poor and the most needy. As we all know, the primary goal of the government is to provide people exemplary service with equal treatment with their clients and help the person who is in need, while private organizations' main goal is to earn profit in order for them to sustain. So as expected, since it is through by the private sector, we cannot assure nga maprotektahan ang poor and most needy. And the last one, we have direct private agencies to provide only publicly funded services. So since we are in the government, we tend to give extra miles of work. So to those who are in the government, no? So we tend to give extra miles of work to reach our obligation and satisfy our clients with our services. But in private alternative services, in private institution, they do not. They work for the time and effort in what they paid for, diba? So that's the end of my report. But before I will end my report, I will just clarify that alternative service delivery to delivery by the private sector does not mean nga privatized siya. Pwede man siya nga i-entrust lang jud sa government ang program or services nga ihatag. I will just state an example. Sa electrification program where ang government sa diri sa tuwa ang Samsuraco is mao man ato ang provider sa power. So the government naghatag siya og subsidy only. Subsidy to the electric companies para ipasuga sa mga tawo nga nanginahanglan katong mga poor, diba? So dili siya but pasabot nga makig-partner sila ay nga ihatag nila ang services to privatize na siya. No, but it is only a coordination to the private sector. So that's the end of my report, I guess. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Rosalie.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Before we will proceed, is Miss Jane Havillana around?
Yes, ma'am.
Nana may report? Para i-report?
Yes, ma'am.
Natagaan na mo, Havillana, Manglabi, Matusalim.
Yes, ma'am.
Impresto na apil sa inyo.
Kinsa to, ma'am?
Rian Impresto na apil sa inyo.
Ma'am, karon ko ma'am, group 7.
Apil ka sa group 7. Sige.
Yes, ma'am.
Kini si Sapong.
Wala, ma'am.
Wala siya ka-group.
Ma'am, group 11 ko ma'am.
Okay. Kamuta na mo'y topic. Wala topic diri sa section na 130 to 430. Okay na tanan.
Yes, ma'am. Mag-ask lang may kung unsa ming group, ma'am.
Ano yung topic gani?
Katong 8 ways.
Group 12 na to.
Okay, ma'am. Copy, ma'am.
Ma'am,
Thank you.
11, ma'am. Wala pa rin topic.
Kanilyo?
Yes po, ma'am. 11 po.
11. Wala pa may topic.
Wala pa po, ma'am.
Group 11 is the source of public sector management reform.
Ma'am, pwede pabalik po. Thank you po.
I-type lang ako. Dili sa chat.
Thank you po, ma'am.
So proceed.
Okay, Okay, ma'am. Good afternoon, everyone. I am J.N. Impresto reporting regarding co-production. What is co-production? Co-production is the mix, joint, or mutual activities that both public service agents and citizens contribute to the provision of public services. It is the involvement of individual citizens and group in public service delivery. Sa ako ang summarization kay daghan ko research nga meaning sa co-production, murag isa ra jud ang key point niya. It is the involvement of society or the community to the government's projects or services. So kung sa atua co-production has been used to refer to the involvement of parents in organizational decision-making and providing support to professionals like kanang mag-PTA meeting or mag-brigada eskwela. So, kung na sila gusto nga i-propose nga project, ang mga teachers, mangayo sila or mag-gain sila og suggestions or comments gikan sa parents para ang project nga mahimo is effective ba jud siya, kung maka-benefit ba jud ang mga parents o ang students. And then, napo ko'y mga cited examples para masabtan jud kung unsa jud ang co-production. So, sa ako ang pagpangutana sa akong kauban diri sa office, isa sa iyahang gi-recommend nga example is kaning kalahi seeds nga project sa DSWD. Sa ako ang na familiar sa kalahi seeds, kanang makig-coordinate ang taga DSWD sa LGU dayon barangay kung unsay need nga project ani nga barangay. So makig-coordinate sila sa mga barangay officials, then through that nanay involvement ang barangay or ang community sa project sa government. Another is that ang kaning from DOLE through the LGU nga mag-conduct og seminars or trainings for women para makamugna og livelihood program like food making, food processing, rug making, kanang maghimo sila og trapo para maka-endorse og entrepreneurial skills sa ilaha para pud maka-income sila para dugang support sa ilahang family. Another is that kaning bag-o lang karon ang Cacao Festival nga ginahimo sa province. Para sa kuha, nindot siya nga initiative para maka-encourage bitaw sa cacao farmers, cacao entrepreneurs nga mo introduce pa sa mga products nga mahimo di ay sa cacao. So from the project of the government, gi-connect di adto sa mga farmers, then ni come up og kanang nindot nga idea para daghan pang mga tawo ang ma-encourage nga mo patronize sa product nga cacao. Next slide, sir. Co-production is widely presented as a new and more inclusive way of developing and delivering public goods and services, responding to concerns about the extent to which the state, on the other hand, and the market, on the other, can realistically provide public services that adequately meet the needs of different citizens. It can help ensure that resources are used to develop the services that people really want. It is linked with better outcomes for people who use the services and careers. So sa ako nang giingon ganina, kay involved naman ang community sa project. Mas magamit jud nila ang project kay kabalo man sila kung unsa jud need sa ilaha. So kung ma-provide na sa government kung unsay need sa ilaha, then magamit na ni nila efficiently. How does co-production affects individuals and society? Co-production creates social networks of consumers, users, and employees who share common experiences and give consumers a sense of belonging. Social networks of consumers who share similar experiences from using a given product or receiving a similar service, both good and bad, are highly valued. So, unsa may apekto sa co-production sa individual? Para sa kwa, makahimo siya og self-importance value sa mga tao sa society. Dili makakuan sila ba nga kanang ay appeal di ko sa project, appeal di mi sa project. So gi-acknowledge mi sa government nga ma-involve mi ani. Hay salamat kay kanang madungog ra amo ang kanang unsa di among kinahanglan di ari. So ing ana siya. And then sa community pod, co-production can help make the best use of resources, deliver better outcomes for people who use services and careers, build stronger communities, and develop citizenship. To do co-production, organizations need to make changes to their culture, structure, and practice, and to regularly review progress. Ang apekto pod sa co-production sa community is that can build strong relationship between the community and the government. Then it takes time and resources. This isn't just about the practical things like finding time when everyone can meet. It takes time to build up relationship of trust between the people involved. Next slide, sir. So what are the co-production principles? Number 1 is that recognizing people as assets. So dili nimo i-taken for granted ang mga tao nga involved nga liability man ni sila oy mga samok ra man ni sila oy, so imo silang i-recognize as assets. Second is that building on people's capabilities. Another is developing two-way reciprocal relationships, and then encouraging peer support. Well, blurring boundaries between delivering and receiving. So kani sila is gihatagan nimo og way nga mag-welcome ka og new ideas and recommendations para ma-improve ang project. Maka-gain ka og ganang ideas gikan sa ilaha nga para mas mulambo pa ang project nga inyuhang buhaton. And then the last one is facilitating rather than delivering. So dili kay humanan nimog deliver ang usa ka project dito sa community, humanan nimog hatag tanan ana-ana, pasagdaanan nimo. Dapat ang principle sa co-production is that mo facilitate pud siya, mo monitor siya kung effective ba jud o efficient ba jud ang project dito sa community, kay basin nagsayang-sayang lang og kwarta nga na dili day siya efficient. So naa jud siya monitor nga or facilitating nga mahitabo. Next slide, sir. So as a individual, how can you best support co-production? Or ikaw nga ma-involve sa project sa government, how can you best support co-production? First is important things to bear in mind. First is know that co-production will look different depending on the context and the people you are working with. So dapat dili lang kamo kuan sa imuhang unsa imong tuwan, maminaw pud ka sa mga tao nga involved. Be open to new ideas, prepared to share power and responsibility. Be ready to be challenged and possibly challenged back. So, manggawas na ang mga brainstorming sa ideas nga ingani among kinahanglan, ingani dapat buhaton, ingani ang mga ingana. So, nindot na siya nga strategy nga para mo mamahimong mas efficient ang usa ka project. Be honest and transparent with people about expectations and limitations. So, panalitan kung nag-declare ka og project nga ingani ang budget, dapat ingani jud siya, dapat dili dapat walay kuan ka ng kaltas-kaltas, ingana bitaw. And then embed co-production throughout your project. Make sure it's part of everyone's rule to get it right. Try not to rely on the same people to contribute. keep it fresh and welcome new voices. So dili lang ka mag-stick sa mga tao nga naila lang nimo nga kuan. So kung naay tao nga gusto mo involve ing ana, andam pud ka maminaw nga i-welcome pud ilahang mga ideas kay basin di ay na pud siya much better nga idea. And then lastly, be mindful of the fact that co-production is not one piece of work. It will evolve with your project. Be prepared to make mistakes, learn, and improve as you go. So, nga na no, learning is the best teacher daw. So, kani siya nga last nga support is encourage ta nga makaton ta sa unsa may kanang kung natay sayop kay dili man jud perfect na no. Kung naay sayop mukaton ta dili ta mag-blaming sa ay kani man gud si kapitan mao mo nga dili ing ana. So gi-encourage ta nga kung unsa man gali ang results sa atong project mo stand ta nga kana and then welcome ta nga mag-change. Open-minded ta nga mag-change para sa more effective o efficient nga purpose. Satura siya ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, Jayan.
You're welcome, ma'am.
Another example also of co-production is the outsourcing, contracting out. For example, ikaw, you engage in services of other company to do the job.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, proceed. Next reporter, please.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Good afternoon, classmate. I am Richelle Conte, and I am the fourth reporter, and my topic is about concept of co-production. Co-production is based on the production of own services and resources by citizen completely or in part. It involves the willingness of citizen or users together with public service to design, implement, and improve the delivery of services in order to innovate, transform public services. My co-reporter cite an example from public service, and I choose to cite an example from private like food chain industry. Because sa food chain industry, nakadepende ang ilang production of what services nga mahatag nila sa ilang customer. So even if dili mahurot ilang products, still they deliver service to the public. Because of the competition or because of the high technology, food chain industry innovated their service through engaging another party, which is food service delivery like Food Panda, Booknoy, indaghan na kayong online nga mga kuan karon, mga service delivery. Co-production includes co-management and co-governance. Co-management, the concept of co-management implies the introduction of third party and to the process of management of the delivery services. Musti ko sa kuan example sa food chain delivery. Sa mga food delivery services, especially sa Food Panda, kay na ako'y app sa Food Panda, no? Kanang, always na sila magkuan sa ilahang app na mo pop up nga na ang mga naisang food chain nga muhatag sila og discount sa ilang mga product. So in that way, na-introduce sa Food Panda, which is the third party, ang mga products sa first party. Co-management creates the result by bringing relationship between different organizations to internal production process and creating new network, which in some cases brings strong positive impact. However, can be seen as negative due to the lack of accountability and increasing competition between different network. Sa kuan magudpod og sa online manggudpod pwede ra bitaw magkuan daghan na kay nang gina-report nga mag-order and then pagkahuman dili sila mo kuan, so maglisod og kuan og kinsay accountability ato accountable ato sa ilang order nya moingon na wala nag order permanent na ako siya makita sa mga reports and then makabuild sila og relationship kay from the first party which is the Pujin to the third party which is the delivery services magkuan na sila og unsaon nila pag kuan og better service sa ilahang mga customer. Okay. Next sir please. Co-governance. The concept of co-governance lies under the arrangement of the third party and public agency if the decision-making, planning of public service. Wala na ko gi-set example niya. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel.
You're welcome, ma'am.
Next reporter.
Ngayong hapon, madunggan ako, ma'am. Hello? Hello?
Hinay man ka, Mr. Humagba.
Hinay kayo, sir. Hinay kayo mong tingog, sir.
Hinay kaayo? Kana, sir. Hinay gihapon, sir.
Hinay gyud. Kasi wala na nimo ma-volume mong microphone.
Dali lang, ma'am, ha?
Iduo lang daw ang kuan, sir, ang imuhang baba sa earphones. Basig mo kusog-kusog siya.
Kana, sir.
Idol pa daw, sir. Katong itong dapit sa na volume. Katong may ibutang dapit sa imong baba.
Kana, sir. Hinay gihapon.
Medyo kusog-kusog na siya gamay, sir.
Kusog na gamay, pero masabtan ako, sir.
Pero hinay gyapon gid, sir. Dili kay mas iduol gid daw siya. Idulit na lang gid, sir, sa baba nimo, sir, para kusog.
Hello ma'am, kana sir.
Okay na, louds na. Louds.
Madungog na ma'am?
Kaya duwag na kayo, sir.
Wait lang gamay sir ha. Okay, mayang hapon sa tanan. I'm Godofredo Humagbas, the last reporter of Group 7. I'm here to discuss about the benefits and risks of co-production. By the way, ang ako ang reference ani is tawag na siya, article written by Lowetz about the benefits and risks of co-production. So here are the three benefits. As you can see, letter A, better services, better relationships between citizen or client and a professional organization. And letter C, better democratic quality. So sa article, gidiscuss siya ang each benefits by showing these three clusters, which is from top to bottom. Muna siya ang A, B, C, respectively. So our first cluster of assumptions, ito nang nas pinakataas, is that co-production can be positively linked to better public services. That co-production leads to more cost-effective and more effective services. That co-production ensures quality of public services, and that co-production creates more satisfaction with the public services. And finally, co-production leads to better performance. It is assumed that co-production leads to stronger perceptions of customization, which can be linked to government responsiveness and cost reductions. This in turn should then lead to more favorable assessments by citizens or clients of the organization. The more favorable assessments done by the customer or the client, the more loyal the citizen or the customer, which indicates his or her intentions to stay committed to the organization. It is also found that communication between citizens and professionals leads to more effectiveness with a co-production project, which in turn again leads to a more loyal client. So using clients' loyalty as a measurement for satisfaction, we can surmise that co-production leads to a more effective organization and more satisfied client. Another effect of better services is performance. It is found that by incorporating citizen participation, public agencies can better serve their main objectives, thus increasing performance. In the article, certain authors argued that performance measurement can improve citizen trust in government directly through citizen participation in the evaluation process. So, on quality, co-production leads to products or services that are more likely to approximate what the client actually wants, suggesting a responsive organization and better qualitative product. They also imply that with co-production, customer knowledge and motivation increases, which in turn adjusts their understanding of the process. So from these results, we can see that the cluster better public services is closely connected to the cluster better government citizenship relationship. Okay. So in the figure 2, kanang nasa to nga, cluster better relationship between citizens, client, and professional organization. In this cluster of assumptions, the idea is that the co-production leads to a better relationship between the client or the citizen and a professional. Within this cluster, we can discern several intermediate effects that aid in the achievement of a better relationship. So as you can see, we may assume that through co-production, the government's action become more accountable. We can further assume that by co-producing, citizens and administrators work in close contact, which induces mutual learning, which in turn may result in a more responsive government, as it should become easier for citizens to acquire information via co-production. And lastly, the citizens' trust in government, a very important aspect when considering the government citizen relationship could improve drastically. After all, citizens can now put a name and a face to the government. So we can conclude that for better government citizen relationship, the 5 effects mentioned are a necessity to acquire the effect. So the last benefits sa co-production sa one is the cluster for better democratic quality. Our third and final cluster contains assumptions on the link between co-production and democratic quality. So that is citizen empowerment, the level of perceived fairness, and increase in equity within the community. So when considering better democratic quality, citizen empowerment is an important issue. So citizen empowerment is the citizens' perceived influence in government decisions, which follows almost directly from government responsiveness to respond and understand citizen input. So some authors suggest that more direct and frequent interaction with administrators would lead to a sense of empowerment for the citizens. So fairness is salient for those who are less informed and thus more uncertain about the authority in question. Now, when citizens participate in government evaluations and receive information about deliberative public participation, this can be positively related to fairness. So for equity, it is suggested that by lifting the constraints on service users with low economic status, by providing the necessary knowledge and materials can be increased. Study shows that co-production of public services, contrarily to what is more often assumed, can actually increase equity. That is, if co-production projects are specifically designed to lift the classic constraints of the disadvantaged user, co-production may increase both efficiency and equity in public service. So, in general, no, the benefits of co-production, taking part can increase people's self-worth and confidence, as what Ma'am J Gisreganin, as well as providing skills and experience. They can benefit from peer networks and support, again, a new sense of purpose. It can be motivating for staff running services and can reignite their passion for the job. So it can also make services a better fit for the people that use them and more accessible. And it can make an otherwise institutional situation feel more humane. So, para sa risks sa sa co-production, ang article nag-discuss og 6, but ang ilahang naka-elaborate gid og maayo didto nga risk is about crowding in or out ug ang self-serving bias. So, as per letter A, we could note two potential negative consequences. First is that citizen participants comprise of only a small and specific selection of the population. Thus, there are no guarantees that they are representative to their community. Ang ikaduha, the most powerful members of a collaborative group can push selfish decisions. So, our last risk of co-production is the self-serving bias. It is the participants or the citizens' tendency to take more credit for the success of a co-produced product while blaming the partner when there is failure on the product or the services or the service. So, in a study conducted by Leon, as stated in the article, they concluded that although a co-producer is subject to the self-serving bias, this tendency is reduced when the client has a choice in participation. So I guess that ends my report, ma'am. So thank you. And at this juncture, mag-proceed na ba may ani, ma'am, sa pop quiz?
Yes, you may proceed.
Okay, para sa pop quiz na mo, namin 5 ka question o syempre, napod ako na prize. And all the questions were based on what were discussed. So, maghangyo lang ako sa mga... Yes, ma'am.
Ako'y matawag kung kinsay mo tubag.
Dili na may magpaunahan na yung kuan, ma'am. Atong press
aron po tumuban makadawat po itong mga prices.
Sige, ma'am.
Uban mahilom-hilom ra.
Okay, ma'am. So, mag-proceed na ko sa question number 1, ma'am.
Okay, proceed.
Okay, question number 1. Name at least one company that were privatized and run by private individual or organization. So, ikaw na magtawag, ma'am. Answer, ma'am.
To answer. Sarah Tabacolde to answer the question of Mr. Godofredo.
Good afternoon, classmates, ma'am. Sample of the private organization or an example, ma'am, is the MVIC, ma'am, the Motor and Vehicle Inspection Center, ma'am, that is really connected to the LTO, where they help the LTO in checking the our motors and vehicle, ma'am.
Ma'am Rosel, okay na Ma'am Rosel?
Okay. Okay ra,
Okay,
ma'am.
ma'am. So, daghan pa na siya, no? Kanang mga
Daghan dyan na
private
siya.
company.
From government nga na privatize. So, okay ra na siya.
Okay, ma'am. So, automatic na ang price ato, ma'am.
Yes.
Mangayo lang tao ko number nila kay load naman tong price.
Okay. Pagkahuman aning question and answer, mangyo lang mi sa katong mga ipagtawag ni ma'am nga kindly PM your cellphone number
Sa group chat na lang sir gado.
sa group chat. Pwede po daw kuno GCash.
Pwede na po. Depende silang wish.
Okay, let's proceed. Question number 2. Generally, what is the objective of having ASD or alternative service delivery? So, kinsay ko mo answer ani ma'am?
This will be answered by Mr. Miss D or Mr. Kumini Yusuf.
Yes, ma'am.
Lalaki din.
Yung lalaki, ma'am. Alternative service delivery is it's the process of transferring the distribution of service from the government to the private sector or another public body, ma'am. So that's the objective.
Ma'am Rosel.
Pwede na rin siguro, but for
It's
me,
I can add, ma'am, something.
yes.
It's
Sige, sir.
to the alternative service delivery objectives are to promote equal and equitable treatment of employees, then value for money for the government, and maximization of the employees' opportunities in the public service of the public service employees. Ma'am. That's it. Thank you.
Okay.
So,
Thank
okay.
you.
Okay, in addition, class, why consider managed competition? So, alternative service delivery can also provide competition. And because of competition, the local government unit will be trying their best to maximize their efforts to provide more efficient and effective public service.
Okay, so for question number 2, ma'am, nalang pud mi gi-prepare pud na kuan. Answer pud but naka iguom pud tong imong gitawag ganina. So here's the answer. Muna siya ang as provided, no? So ang objective ng ASD is to attend the 3 E's in public service.
Yes.
The first is
efficient,
economical service or performance.
Performance. Kay mukumpit naman sila, maulaw man sila kay may pamandayaning alternative service nga i-provide kay sa atua. So, murag matouch po na ang ito sa LGU or any other agency nga providan sa alternative service.
Yes, ma'am. So, for question number 3, kani, provided by Miss Rosel. So, give another example kuno in delivery by another level of government. So, gimension ganina sa part ni Ma'am Rosel, no, sa ESD namon tuy tulo ka buok. So,
This will be answered by Elsa Ramayrat.
Ma'am Ramayrat.
Yes, ma'am. Another example in delivery by another level of government. Example is LBC.
Any thoughts, Ma'am Rosel?
LBC? Ma'am? Kasi
LBC, ma'am. Can it be or not? DRS.
Ano ni siya ma'am, practical lang question lang ni ma'am cause para ba share po din mo imong ideas or knowledge diri namo. So maybe it's correct ma'am. Ma'am Els.
Okay.
So is Miss Elsa be given a prize?
Yes ma'am.
Okay. But you
Hello?
are also welcoming any other idea, Rosel, to specifically answer the question, or insakto na itong iyahang answer, or you still need another master to answer or elaborate further about question number 3?
If meron ma'am. Pwede ma'am. Yung specific talaga kasi yung example ko kanina on that delivery by another level of government is yung small scale mining po. So di ba po ma'am
yung ni Elsa kay katumang mo deliver ba pareha na LBC daw.
So I
But
practical lang siya.
Mr. Kirby? Is Kirby Pérez around? Babae ba ni si Kirby or lalaki?
Lalaki.
Wait lang mo. Yes,
Kirby, can you give another specific example in delivery by another level of government?
Kuan.
Based on the
energy, ma'am. Mag-deliver ba siguro service delivery may ana, ma'am? No.
So, Rosel, are you satisfied with the answer of
Energy. Di ko. Sir Carbs.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Si ma'am lang siguro ang mag-decide no ba?
Sige.
Kay kuan, dili ko po sure. Kay tanan naman dili na to pabalaan ang kuan jud. Dili na to mag-gets kung unsa gyud ang mga kuan delivery by another level of government. But based on my understanding, yung small scale mining talaga kaya yun ang naging example ko. Kasi it was managed by government before, then karon gikuan na siya sa LGU, di ba? Mga small scale mining. LGU na lang ang permitting. So, that's it. All of that. So, that's why I'm asking for the another ideas for another.
Okay. Okay na? Satisfied na? Proceed
Okay
to
na,
question
ma'am.
number 4.
Thank you.
So let's proceed to question number 4, ma'am.
Okay, Rosel, will you give a prize to Mr. Kirby? Kuduhay mo tagaan si Ramayra at si Kirby.
Sila lang duha, ma'am.
Okay.
Sige, send na lang Sir Curbs, imuhang number, email.
For question number 4, so pwede ni siya yes or no, no? Then pwede po na to elaborate gamay atong answer. Do you believe that being part of a community that supports the project of a government increases your self-worth and confidence?
Okay, may I call on Mr. name is Julian Sapong. Si Julian.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Panera.
Uh,
So I need I would like to hear from you your point of view. So not just yes or no.
my answer, ma'am, is yes, ma'am.
Okay. Elaborate further.
Do you believe that being part of the committee that supports the project of the government? It will improve my self-worth and confidence, ma'am, because it will, I would be giving a contribution for the betterment of the community, ma'am.
So, ito ba ito ng tanan eh. Minsan yung kabuhat sa question number 4.
Ako, ma'am.
Jan. So, are you satisfied with the answer of Jillian?
Yes, ma'am. Satisfied
Okay. So, we'll proceed to, so, is
Last question, ma'am.
Jillian worthy of receiving your prize?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, proceed to question number 5.
So, muna no, last question. In your own opinion, is it favorable or preferable to use ASD or not?
Okay, I would like to request Rio Solong, since he is the administrator of the LGU of Lapuyan. So this is best suited for him to answer the question.
24, sir.
In my own opinion, I think yes, ASD or the alternative service delivery is favorable or somewhat preferable for, especially for local government, especially if the government nowadays di na to kaya bitaw i-hold tanan. So we need other alternative measures. We can talk with other private sectors to join us in the government as a community para mas more effective and efficient ang delivery natin sa service para sa mga tao.
Okay, thank you. Now this is what is being done by some LGUs, no? Because the ERA, the personal services is only 55% of the ERA. And because other employees cannot be accommodated by the 55%. 55 anyone, LGU?
Ma'am, ang ERA?
Ang personal services, ilang
personal,
45, 55.
murag nisaka daw karon nga year, ma'am. Nisaka man tong 10, if I'm not mistaken, murag naana sa 65 yata ron. Di ko sure, ma'am, I'm not sure, basta ako na ibawaan karon kay nisaka ang personal services nga budget.
So sa una kay 55 raman to, what the other LGUs are doing to take an option is to use the alternative service delivery. So ilang ibuhat, they hire a contractor or pareha ng mga services bitaw sa kanang mga janitorial and security agency. So nagbuhat sila of contract of agreement between another agency to deliver them the services needed for that certain NGO. So, dili naman to siya makategorize as employer-employer relation. Ato nga nanay mga contract of service nga buhaton. Ang uban na mga 6 months period, 3 months period. Kay anak pong mga paagiha ang uban, dili na sila obliged to give bonuses, no? So, mo na important sa alternative service delivery. So, mostly nagyod sa mga LGUs are availing of the alternative service program.
Yes,
Any other questions from the group?
So, wala na ma'am. Muna to yung last. So, that ends our report. The report of Group 7. Daghang salamat.
Daghang salamat, Group 7.
Salamat,
and thank you
ma'am.
for being so resourceful. We'll proceed to Group 9.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Yes, laban lang ta na mag-on ko og mag-on ko microphone, mag-on ko video. Wala maghagay sa light. And I want you all to participate kay naami gamay nga icebreaker. Makita ra ba ko? Di lagi na ako makita akong self.
Kita
Makita
na
ra.
ka, ma'am. Laban lang.
Yes, ma'am.
Para charot.
Makita na ka, ma'am.
Yes, and ako'y alam ko gamay nga pakulo. Actually, we are the group 9 and we're going to report about equity, representation, and indigenous governance. So before na ko ipaila-ila ang mga reporters, naalang tay gamay nga marag icebreaker and I'm requesting everyone to open po ang ilahang kanang videos. Please, please, please open. Yung ating mga gamay nga pakulo.
Ang tanan.
Yes ma'am. Yes ma'am. Kung mahimo.
Yes. Open all your palm.
Yes. Pakuan lang ni siya pa. Share lang tagamay, no? And kanang, kabalo ba mo sa song na do song? Kabalo mo, no? Do song, no?
Ito lang sa Blackpink, ma'am.
Do song. Ay, bet sana ko na, pero dili. I
Dili
want
dahil.
you all to, ana atong hands. Di mo na ako makita akong self, pero makita ninyo? Ana, dayon, kanta ta og do song ha. Kabalo kung kabalo jud mo ani. It's a very common song. Ana na siya. Kabalo siguro mo anang do, no? Baby shark, do. Baby shark. Diba? Nakatawa mo na, Charles. Sige, kanta ta. One song lang, Jude. Isa lang ka song, ani. Sige, 1, 2, ready, go. Baby shark, do. Baby shark, do. Baby shark, do. Baby shark. Yes, thank you so much for cooperation, no? And kanang pakuan lang siya, pa-break lang siya sa tension, the pressure, and all. And of course, I am going to kanang present the reporters for our kanang group, no? The first one would be Ma'am Eliza Carla Agot, and the second one would be me. The third one would be Miss Jessa Lim, and the next would be Mr. Ken Sulong, and the last reporter would be Ma'am Elsa Ramayrat. So, ready na ta, Ma'am Eliza? Hi, Ma'am. Adungra ko. Go. I'm going
Yes,
to give
ma'am.
the floor to Ma'am Eliza na. Thank you so much for cooperation, classmates. Okay, so... Can we mag-share of screen, Ma'am?
Ma'am Eliza, ikaw yung share of screen.
Okay, sure. Sorry, wait.
Sorry.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. My report is all about recognition to representation, indigenous participation in the Philippines. So the Philippines, 7,107 islands are home to more than 500 indigenous people communities. Indigenous people in the world remain one of the poorest, most excluded and disadvantaged sectors of society. They continuously face different issues including discrimination, poverty, and human rights abuse. In response to these challenges, the Philippine government has passed the Indigenous Peoples' Rights Act of 1997, or the IPRA law, which affirms Indigenous peoples' rights to ancestral domains, self-governance and empowerment, social justice and human rights, and rights to cultural identity. So, how does the legal recognition of traditional institutions affect governance and the functioning of the state? In particular, does it make governments more accountable to communities living under traditional governance? So recognition of IPs increases electoral mobilization directed toward obtaining public goods from the state. First, they need to be recognized to allow the state to extend its reach in a way that is compatible with the incentives of local elites. Second, it facilitates the establishment of a political identity among groups defined by a history of marginalization, encouraging and enabling them to channel demands through the formal political system. So ICC IP representatives shall be qualified and chosen by their own communities in accordance with a process to be determined by them.
The NCIP, in close coordination with the DILG, shall come up with appropriate measures to ensure the full participation of IPs in matters affecting their development. Such measures shall also include the provision of technical assistance to develop the IP representatives' knowledge of traditional socio-political systems, customary laws, justice system, and skills in interfacing with non-IP governance and political making. So it is important na matagaan ang mga IPs o personality as a marginalized sector and have a representative in the local legislative body. In the grassroots, for instance, sa ato ang locality, so sa ato ang barangays, so that they can obtain the help they need from the government. So the IP representative sitting in our sangguniang barangay, for instance, will serve as their voice para mapaabot ilang collective ideas and maprotect and preserve ilang rights. And it is through a mandatory representative since they are a marginalized sector, so dili kalikayan ang harassment and discrimination during elections and also electoral competitiveness. So when we talk about IPs daw, always yun na nga ang procedures to be determined by them and then by their own communities for a substantive representation of indigenous peoples in local government. So next is representation and benefits. The representation of indigenous peoples in parliament is first and foremost a reflection and symbol of the state's recognition of the unique interests, needs, and rights of indigenous peoples. Parliamentary representation of indigenous peoples, a traditionally underrepresented and historically marginalized group. It can help ensure that their rights are protected and their unique interests are heard and translated into relevant policies while at the same time preventing conflict. So the state shall extend to them the same employment rights, opportunities, basic services, educational and other rights and privileges available to every member of the society. Accordingly, the state shall likewise ensure the employment of any form of force or coercion against IPs shall be dealt with by law. So the IPs have the right to fully participate at all levels of decision making in matters which may affect their rights, lives, and destinies through procedures determined by them, as well as to maintain and develop their own indigenous political structures. Consequently, the state shall ensure that they be given mandatory representation in policy-making bodies and other local legislative councils, and shall have the same privileges as the regular members of the legislative bodies and our policy-making bodies. And so with this, NCIP issued Administrative Order Number 1, Series of 2009, or the National Guidelines for the Mandatory Representation of Indigenous Peoples in Local Legislative Councils. So, ang atong mga IPs are afforded the same benefits as our local legislators. Sa Zamboanga del Norte, for instance, kay dito mo ko nag-work, so dito ang akong example, very determined ang NCIP Provincial Director to let an IP representative sit in the barangay councils, especially those nga daghan gid IPs. Unya, very hesitant ang atong barangays because once na natay IP representative, pwede na gyud ba nga every term na dayon IP representative, dayon maglisod na sila og tangtang ana nga representative. Unya, since afforded man sila the same benefits, the same rights, the same claims, the same honorarium sa atong regular sangguniang barangay members, unya ang uban moingon ba nga sila daw na sila gasto sa eleksyon dayon kaning mga IP representatives nato wala. So medyo hesitant gyud ang atong barangays ana sa tinuod lang. Unya, medyo affected po ang atong annual budget, so mao nang hesitant sila. And one barangay mismo, ni-certify siya nga daghan gyud og IP sa ilang community. But since dili man siya ganahan mo hatag the same benefits nga ginahatag nila sa ilahang sangguniang barangay member, i-charge na niya to janitorial services. And that was a proud moment for him kay para niya bisan pa og janitorial services to na-recognize niya ang IP representation kay mulingkod man still sa council ana makahatag sa iyahang comments or suggestions ug maka-represent sa ilang community. But we advised him sa DILG that it is against RA 8371 or the IPRA law, which stated the same benefits gyud ang makuha sa IP as that of regular sangguniang barangay members. So, Indigenous representation in Parliament can also benefit society at large because Indigenous practices and knowledge can provide solutions to complex environmental, developmental, and governance problems that all societies face today. Such representation presupposes the recognition of Indigenous peoples as a distinct identity and legal category in each country. So recognition through the granting of collective land titles is associated with increased indigenous self-identification, but also with greater national identity and multiple indicators of voluntary compliance and state integration. So the Philippines, Mandao, has one of the most robust and well-developed legal frameworks for the recognition of indigenous people in Southeast Asia. Under the IPRA law, indigenous communities in the Philippines are granted rights to collective self-determination within their ancestral domains. Mauna ang i-protect sila through our laws. Otherwise, mawala jud sila siguro kay marginalized sector lagi so pwede ra gyud nga mapanamastamasan sila or unsa ba through IP-related policies preserved and recognized ang ilang mga practices. So their traditions, including sa disasters gani, ga-recognize ang ilang traditions in spite sa atong technology karon. They have used their traditional knowledges to prepare for, cope with, and survive disasters. Indigenous peoples, through their experience and traditional knowledge, provide an important contribution to the development and implementation of plans and mechanisms, including for early warning. So naatoy kuan nga kanidong sa atong disasters no ang IP daw na sila ilang own way nga mahibaw-an nila kung naay padulong nga disaster mao nga makasurvive ra gyud daw sila. So even po sa ato ang justice system, sa atong katarungang pambarangay for instance, ila ang ways are accepted. So kung naay managsilingan nga naglagyo ang buot, pwede ra nga magpasettle sila sa ilang ancestors, sa ilang IP leaders, or sa ilahang timuay ay sa ato ang lubong tagapamayapa, which is unta ang proper forum nato. But since ato ang mag-recognize ang ato ang indigenous people, pwede ra gyud nga sila ilahang own ways gyud ug ato na siya gi-recognize. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ma'am
Thank
Alay.
you, Lisa.
Thank you.
Very well explained, no? Next reporter, please.
Ma'am Eliza, pwede ko pa stop share your
Ikaw next, Ma'am Kanoy, no?
Yes.
Ma'am,
Ay,
ako gyapon share or ikaw na?
Oh, sorry.
Ako na. Okay. Tara. Wait lang ha. Makita na? Makita ra ko ang screen?
Yes, ma'am. Maklara
Yes,
naman.
ma'am. Yes. So once again, good afternoon. And my name is Vifelin Canoy and currently connected sa LGU Tubod as the Administrative Assistant 1 and at the same time the designated LYD of LGU Tubod. So today I'm going to report about Indigenous Governance. So we all know that the Philippines is a very culturally diverse country with an estimated of 12 million indigenous peoples belonging to no ethno-linguistic groups and one of every 6 Filipinos is a member of indigenous cultural community. So grabe no, imagine one of every 6 Filipinos member di ay sa atong mga IPs. So these indigenous peoples remain among the poorest sector. Grabe gid sila hangtod karon poorest member gyapon sila sa atong poorest sector of the Philippine society and remaining and kanang gyapon sila as kanang powerless and disadvantaged peoples. So as we can see in the ethnographic map of the Philippines, Indigenous peoples are mainly concentrated in Luzon, sa makita nato dira no sa atong Cordillera region, and sa Region 2 specifically sa Caraballo Mountains, and sa rest of Luzon area which is from the Sierra Madre Mountains. And you also have several indigenous peoples in some island groups diri sa ato ang Palawan, and of course sa ato ang Mindanao, sa northern and western, sa southern and eastern, and of course sa central Mindanao. Nagkalat gyud atong mga IPs diha. So, kinsa man ning mga IPs nga ginatawag nato mga indigenous peoples or the kanang indigenous cultural communities. Sige ta og mention yet wala data kabalo kinsa gyud ni sila no. Sila ning kaning silang mga IPs, sila ning mga tawo nga nagpuyo sa mga komunidad, mga geographically distinct ilang mga habitats, meaning kanang bitong mga ancestral territories sila, ay naa sila sa mga ancestral territories, then part sila sa mga cultural groups or katong mga groups nga kanang bitong gipasa from one generation to another generation. Then of course defined ilang territories. Then kani pud sila na maintain nilang ilang cultural, ilang social, ilang economic and political institutions, and separated sila from the dominant society. Agree or agree?
Agree.
Ano ba? So next, so the under Philippine Constitution namugna ang Indigenous Peoples' Right Act. That was enacted on October 29, 1997, and of course took effect on November 22, 1997. So in recognition ni siya sa diversity and under the framework of our national unity and development, so unsa gyud ning ato ang ginatawag nga Indigenous Peoples' Rights Act or IPRA, di ba? So it is an act to recognize, protect, and promote the rights of indigenous cultural communities or indigenous peoples, creating a national commission on indigenous peoples, establishing, implementing mechanisms, appropriating funds, therefore, and for other purposes. So kaning ato ang ginatawag nga IPRA, this law seeks to stop prejudice, di ba? Sa atong mga IPs, kay recognize man nato ang ilahang lands, ang ilahang rights, of course, ang ilang social justice, and ang ilahang cultural integrity. So this will not only protect the lands sa atong mga indigenous peoples, but also their human rights, most importantly, as for the human rights of the Filipino indigenous peoples. Nagets or nagets?
Gets.
So there are 4 rights of ICCs or IPs: the rights to ancestral domain and lands, the right to self-governance and empowerment, social justice and human rights, and of course cultural integrity. So I'm going to tackle the first 2 rights, and the next reporter will tackle the 3rd and 4th right. So rights of ancestral domain. So kaning rights to ancestral domain, these includes territories, pero dili lang katong mga territories lang ha, katong not only the physical environment but also the total environment, including katong mga spiritual domains nila, mga cultural areas nilang gipang occupy. So first is the right of ownership. Very sabotable, no? This is the right to claim ownership over lands, also bodies of water, ilang kato kung ganina katong mga sacred places nila, ilang mga traditional hunting grounds or ilang mga fishing grounds, and all of their traditionally and actually occupied nga mga lands and bodies of water. So next is the right to develop lands and natural resources. So this right to develop, kani nga right mag-develop, mag-control, and mag-use sa lands nga gipanag-iyahan nila. Also, to conserve po ng ilang natural resources for their benefit sa ilaha, and also sa allocation and utilization of their natural resources. If gani na ay mga projects na maka-affect sa ilang mga ancestral domains, no, like sa atong mga government na may mga projects pod usahay, they have the right to be informed. Dapat gyud na ay right ila mga makahibalo sila, mo participate sila and receive just and fair compensation if gani na ay damage if na ay damage as a result of this project nga katong gi-propose. So next is the right to stay in territory. So they have also the right to stay in their territory and not to be removed. Charot. Dili sila pwede basta-basta ma-remove. So no IPs shall be relocated without their free and prior informed consent. Bawal jud na siya. If relocation is necessary, kanang kung kinahanglan na jud bitaw, kanang kinahanglan na jud dili jud sila nga if relocation and dili na jud sila kabalik bitaw sa ilahang ancestral lands, dapat guaranteed yun by agreement or appropriate procedure nga provided sila with lands of quality and with legal basis pod nga suitable sa ilang present needs and of course sa ilang future development. So next is the right in case of displacement. In case daw nga ma-displace sila. So in case man gani ma-displace as a result of natural catastrophes, like if ever nagka-landslide sila or nabuhawian ang ilang ancestral domains, ang state mag-resettle to areas nga maka-provide sa ilaha og temporary life support. Temporary life support system nga provided pod nga mobalik sila sa ilang abandoned lands if rapod pwede sila makabalik dito if normal and safe na nga mobalik sila sa ilang place. So next is the right to regulate entry of migrants. Very kuan siya sabotable no nga. Napod sila yung right nga mag-regulate kung kinsay musulod sa ilahang settler sa ilang lugar. And of course, not just kanang mga kuan pod mga settlers and organizations. Di ba kay usahay di ba basta mo atuta sa ilahang lugar kay kinahanglan gyud ta og permission nila if allowed ba ta mo adto dito. So next is the right to safe and clean air and water. I think this is kani nga right pod siya kay dili lang siya applicable sa mga IPs no sa tanan pod. Okay, for this purpose manggod, IPs shall have also access dili lang tong mga dominant society kani pod sila maka-access pod sila sa ato ang mga integrated systems for the management of their inland waters and airspace. So next is the right to claim parts of reservation. So this right to claim parts of ancestral domains which have been reserved for various purposes except lang katong reserve for nga intended for common public welfare and service. So next is the right to resolve conflict. The right to resolve land conflicts in accordance to customary laws and siya murag amot lang po wala kay ko kuan po naka-research about gid ani no if naabay mga sample pero if ever man gyud kinahanglan gyud siya ang mga complaints must be submitted to amicable settlement gyud sa ilaha between the IPs and the katong ilahang pikas party and of course to the court of justice na gyud if necessary. And the last is the rights to ancestral land. So right of ownership and possession of ato ang mga IPs to their ancestral land shall be recognized and protected. So recognized and protected naman sad sila. So these are the rights to ancestral domain. Now let's proceed to the second rights, which is the right to self-governance and empowerment. So self-governance and self-determination. The state recognizes the right to self-governance and self-determination and respects also the integrity of their values, ilang mga practices, ilang institutions. They can also freely pursue ang ilang economic, social, and cultural development. Kaya diba, lain-lain man gyud ta og governance, lahi masad, diba, kabalo man gyud ta nga lahi man pud ang klase sa panggobyerno sa ato mga IPs, diba? So they also have napod sila right ani. Next is justice system, conflict resolution institutions, and peace building processes. So kaning right to use their own they have the right to use their own commonly accepted justice systems, ilahang mga ways on how to resolve conflicts, o ilahang mga peace building processes and customary laws and practices. Kay di ba? Mahibalaan nato na yung ubang mga APs nga dili amot lang dili anta mag-mention og IP group no, pero naabi uban sila nga di ba basta grabe na kaayo ang imuhang sala, di ba, na ato sila murag mupugot man siguro ulo something ana nga ilahang justice system kung kanang mo traidor man ata ka sa ilahang murag nakabasa ko ana nga if ever bugat na kayo ang imong sala, bugat sa dang imuhang punishment ana. So next is the participation in decision making. They also have the right to participate, no, naagid na sila katungod ani nga mo participate sila sa decision making. And of course, the right to determine and decide priorities for development. They have the right to determine and decide their own priorities, whether ba sa ilang beliefs ba, sa ilahabang spiritual being ba, sa ilahabang institutions or sa ilang lands nga ilahang gipanag-iyahan. Kay naman sad sila naguna-una man sad sila development, no, pero malagi to na sila right. And next is tribal barangays. Kanina apod sila katungod pod nga mo form or mo constitute og separate nga barangay in accordance pod sa atong local government code on the creation of tribal barangays. Kay naaman puy uban good nga well, this is a democratic country, so naapod sila katungod nga mo constitute og kaugalingon nilang group. So that would be all, and then the third and fourth rights will be explained by my co-reporter. So nasabdan ra ba? Naaba may mga clarifications, classmates? Ay, question na.
Wala ma'am.
Wala
Okay
na,
na, ma'am.
ma'am.
Laban ra.
Okay, ma'am. Well explained.
Thank you so much. Ma'am, ikaw na, ma'am. Ma'am Jessalim. Thank you.
Okay, so good afternoon sa tanan. Klaro na kong tingog.
Ma'am Ramla.
Good sa imuhang Mike Jane.
Bale ang
Hello, good afternoon. Dili ko maklaro, ma'am. Mga ma'am, dili ko maklaro.
Klaro
Klaro
Wala
ra,
na,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Klaro ra, ma'am.
Okay, so good afternoon sa tanan. I am Jessalim. Currently connected ko sa Oroquieta Agro-Industrial School at as the administered school diri sa Oroquieta City. Okay, so ang topic is on the another two rights sa IPs o ang NCIP. Okay, so Republic Act number 8371 ang among topic karon, which mo ni ang una pa nga gitakal sa pinakauna pa nga reporter. Okay, so the other two rights are social justice and human rights.
Excuse me, Ma'am Jessa.
Yes, ma'am.
Ma'am, dili makita na mo imong screen, ma'am.
Wala gyapon siya. Kamay lang ma'am ha. Ako ibal.
Present now, ma'am. Dayon, entire window. Thank you.
What is yung dito ko ganito? Okay, sorry. Okay na ma'am? Okay na ma'am?
Wala pa yung makita, ma'am. Paliko gadto sa imong ma'am. Slides, ma'am.
Wala. Mauna akong gi-concert. Nag-share
Ah,
window na ko.
Ayon ang window, ma'am. Ako na, ma'am. Share your screen. Entire screen ang i-click, ma'am.
Okay. Stop sharing sa nako. Tuod, mangayo ko daan o pasensya kung banha kayo ako ang palibot kay timing kaayo. Mao'y pagsugod o kalipay sa uban. Sir, kana sir? Wala gihapon. Unsa man ni nahitabo?
I-share sa, ma'am.
Entire
Pwede
I-share
naman.
niyo, ma'am. I-share your
Sir.
entire screen lang, ma'am.
Mauna
Can
akong
you present
gibuhat sir.
now your entire screen? Ibalik daw, ma'am.
Balik na
Katong
ko. Okay.
kana
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 sir.
go.
Okay. Thank you.
Nag-loading na. Okay, go. Kana okay na na. I-play na mo.
Salamat. Okay, so and human rights and the cultural integrity. Okay, so kani sila nga mga rights is makita nato sa Republic Act 8371 or known as the Indigenous Peoples' Rights Act of 1997 in Chapter 5, Section 21 to 28. So una diri nila is ang equal protection and non-discrimination of ICCs and IPs. So nako gina-quote ng mga lines gikan didto sa Act. So it shall extend to them the same employment rights, opportunities, basic services, educational and other rights, and privileges available to every member of society. Accordingly, the state shall likewise ensure that the employment of any form of force or coercion against ICCs or IP shall be dealt with by law. Okay, so sa karon sa daghan na kaayo og mga projects ang government para sa mga indigenous society. Maskin sa TESDA, daghang project nga mga beneficiaries, target beneficiaries are IPs. So like Project Hill nga maoy kusog karon sa TESDA. So basic services, basic ang education sad. So naay mga communities, IP communities nga nana sila mga eskwelahan ginatukod. So priority na sad sila ang mga eskwela with kuan na sad nasad sila subject na nga katong sa kung saan pagstorya, saan para mabuhi pagbalik mapadayon ang kultura nila. Naa sila dito mag-discuss nila ang arts nila sa IPs o ang ilaang mga uban pa mga culture. So diri sa Misamis Occidental ang IPs na modani is ang Subanen. Second, rights during armed conflict. So since ang mga IP societies nasa sa mga sudlunon nga mga lugar, so prone sila sa mga conflict na pareha karon na time na nabalik na sa ang ato ang mga kaigsunan sa pikas bando. So in case like ang state ang mangitag paagi nga mabalhin sila og lugar, makaplastar sila o kanang himo sila nga safety. Third, right to equal opportunity and treatment. It shall be the right of the ICCs or IPs to be free from any form of discrimination. So same sa gistorya sa pinakauna nga reporter nga ang IPs is napabilin siya nga ubos, napabilin siya nga gina-discriminate pero sa pagkakaroon gihinay-hinay na siya og affect sa ato ang government. So with respect to recruitment and conditions of employment sa daghan karon nga abi kay IP dili daw pero gipangitaan sa government og paagi nga mahimo silang skilled, mahimo silang edukado para ma-lift ang IPs. Next, discrimination against ICC's IPs on the terms and conditions of employment and denial of benefits. So it shall be unlawful for any person to discriminate against any IP with respect to the terms and conditions of employment on account of their descent. Equal remuneration shall be paid to ICC-IP and non-ICC-IP for work of equal value, and to deny any IP employee any right or benefit herein provided for, or to discharge them for the purpose of preventing them from enjoying any of the rights or benefits provided under this Act. Next is basic services. So they have the right to special measures for the immediate, effective, and continuing improvement of their economic and social conditions, including in the areas of employment, vocational training and retraining, housing, sanitation, health, and social security. I-share lang sad po na ako there is in Misamis Occidental na Subanen community nga ginamugna og isa na siya karon sa nahimo nga tourist destination diri sa Misamis Occidental. So part na siya sa housing nga project sa government para sa mga IPs. Dayon katang ginaingon pa nung ganina nga Project Hill, vocational training and retraining maskin sa DSWD natapod siya sa TESDA para sa skills training sa mga kaigsunan nato nga IPs. Sa equal rights for women, IP women shall enjoy equal rights and opportunities with men as regards the social, economic, political, and cultural spheres of life. Okay, so ang babae na IP o ang lalaki na IP, so equal sila. Kung unsang pagka-equal sa babae nga dili siya IP, kanang same ra pud sila. Kaya kintahay sa ilang naman sila'y naa sila'y officers pod sa kada barangay or mag-create po sila into sa municipality. So naa sila yung mga babae po nga mga officers, dili lang puro lalaki. So term pagali nila, kasi sa akong na istorya is, ang term nila sa mga subanen nga babae nga leader is bae po siya. Sorry, so children and youth. The state shall recognize the vital role of children and youth of IPs in nation building and shall promote and protect their physical, moral, spiritual, intellectual, and social well-being. So, just like sa tanan nga kabatanunan og mga bata. So, kung patas lang og rights tanan, maskin IP siya or dili. Dili siya mo. Next. So, protection. Sorry. So next is cultural integrity. This is on the chapter 6, section 29 to 37. So protection of indigenous culture, traditions, and institutions. So the state shall respect, recognize, and protect the rights of IPs to preserve and protect their culture, traditions, and institutions. It shall consider these rights in the formulation and application of national plans and policies. So, ganina, gisgutan po itong representation sa IPs, nga na sila representative sa council sa barangay, sa city, o sa province. So, nanay mo dala sa ila ang tingog dito, ug nanay mo dala sa unsay mga kaayuhan nga sa gobyerno para sa mga IPs. So, nanay mo tabang dito para sa decision making. Next is educational system. The state shall provide equal access to various cultural opportunities to the IPs through the educational system, public or private cultural entities, scholarships, grants, and other incentives without prejudice to their right to establish and control their educational systems and institutions by providing education in their own language. So kitong gingon na ako ganina nga naay mga schools na ang mga IP societies nga naput sila subjects on bahin sa kultura ug tradisyon sa mao nga tribe. Kung diri sa mga subanen, na ako'y friend nga teacher siya, kuan pud siya, subanen sad siya, nang adto pud siya na sign sa area nga daghan ang subanen. Nag-teach pud siya sa saon pag-istorya, sa art, sa spiritual nga aspect pud sa ila nga tribo. Next is recognition of cultural diversity. The state shall endeavor to have the dignity and diversity of the cultures, traditions, histories, and aspirations of the IPs appropriately reflected in all forms of education, public information, and cultural educational exchange. So the state shall likewise ensure the participation of appropriate indigenous leaders in schools, communities, and international cooperative undertaking like festivals, conferences, seminars, and workshops to promote and enhance their distinctive heritage and values. So part po ni siya dito sa representation na gikan sa IPs. So community intellectual rights. So the state shall preserve, protect, and develop the past, present, and future manifestations of their cultures, as well as the right to the restitution of cultural, intellectual, religious, and spiritual property taken without their free and prior informed consent or in violation of their laws, traditions, and customs. So, gina-preserve po itong ilaang mga naandan. So, rights to cultural sites and ceremonies. So, kay naman sila yung mga cultural sites at mga seremonya. So hangtod karon gina-promote ko na siya, ginaalaw nga pagabuhaton gihapon nila, ginaalaw nga practice gihapon nila gani sa mga activities nga kung sa opening prayer na isa Christian, na isa Muslim, ug napoy sa uban pa nga tribe nga naa nang area. Before connected ko sa usa sa ka world usa ka implementing partner sa World Vision. So gina-acknowledge na gyud adto ang sa mga IPs. So pag-pray, appeal na sila na ay prayer nga sa ilaan, isa Muslim, na isa Christian, o kung napailain nga tribe nga naka-appeal nga gathering, ipa-appeal sa nila. So rights to indigenous knowledge, systems, and practices, or the IKSP. So they are entitled to the recognition of the full ownership and control and protection of their cultural and intellectual rights. So ang ilang mga nandan, ilang kultura, protected, mapadayon, o mapasa-pasa pa from generation to generation. So access to biological and genetic resources, and to indigenous knowledge related to the conservation, utilization, and enhancement of these resources shall be allowed within ancestral lands and domains of the IPs only with the free and prior informed consent of such communities. So katong gisgutan pa po ni Ma'am Evelyn ganina, makonect sa ni siya di adto nga kung musulod ta silang area, mananghid ta kung musulod silang ancestral domain, ancestral land, sila ang mga hampuanan or sila ang ludyara, mananghid ta sa ilaa. Kaysa ilaa man na siya. Sustainable agro-technical development. The state shall recognize the right of IPs to a sustainable agro-technological development and shall formulate and implement programs of action for its effective implementation. So right to receive from the national government funds for archaeological and historical sites. So IPs shall have the right to receive from the national government all funds, especially earmarked or allocated for the management and preservation of their archaeological and historical sites and artifacts. When sila representative, so mas paspas na pud ang implementation ang mga projects para pud sa ilaa. Okay, so next is the NCIP, or the National Commission on Indigenous People. So this is stipulated in Chapter 7, Section 38 to 50 of RA F371. So, unsa man ilang buhaton, unsa man ilang gamit, unsa man ang papel sa NCIP. Okay, first is to carry out policies in Republic Act 8371. So, katong mga rights, mga katungod, mga privilege. Next, primary government agency responsible for the formulation and implementation of policies, plans, and programs to promote and protect the rights and well-being of the ICCs or IPs and the recognition of their ancestral domains, as well as their rights thereto. Mandate to protect and promote the interest and well-being of the ICCs or IPs with due regard to their belief, customs, traditions, and institutions. Okay, so in Section 44 of this Republic Act, nakastipulate dito ang powers and functions sa NCIP. So, ubay-ubay siya. Ako lang ning i-share dito sa to ang GC or amo sa usahon sa amo ang group. So, si NCIP is usa siya ka independent agency under the office of the President. So, consisted siya of 7 ka commissioners. So, matag commissioner, so na sila qualification, napod sila tenure of office, o napod compensated pod sila. So, required is, one of the requirement para mahimo sila nga commissioner is bona fide natural-born Filipino citizen and a bona fide member of IPs. So, nasad sila kay, isa man siya ka independent agency, nasad siya lain-lain nga offices, like office on policy, planning, and research, o uban pa, maskin sa education and health. So, sa diri sa MISOC, na NCIP ni sa province, dili lang ko kabalo kung kinsa na ang kuan mo. Dayon currently daghan og projects ang para sa mga IPs. Nagsugod na sad o create og groups sa kada barangay. Gina-identify na kada barangay kung kinsa tong naidugo nga subano. Dayon gitagaan na sa kung saang angay nila o para nila. So dili na ingon nga ang mga IPs is ubos jud kaayo sa ato ang komunidad. Di ko sure kung sakto ba na ako gamiton ang term na dili na sila impoverished. So kuan na sila, maglaro maka-impoverished. Kanang mahimo na sila nga parehal na to, dili ta maingon nga hala subano man na siya, ubos ra siya. Pero sa karon daghan na kaayo og para nila o hopefully mapadayon nga usa siya nga project sa government. So kadto lang ang sa akong report. Daghang salamat ning hapon.
Ma'am, pwede mangutana, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
May hapon din sa tanan no kaning usa ko ka barangay captain ani among barangay. Tapos additional before ko magpangutana kaning katong before ni mga report ang bali ang ilang kuan sa mga IPs dere nag-follow na mi sa Aprilo dayon naa nag-represent sa ilaha sa among council. Tapos compensated pud sila level sa barangay kagawad. Dayon ang ilang way of kuan kini bitong sa pag resolve o conflicts naga-resolve lang sila pag mga IPs pod nga problems dayon bale before ipasumon sa barangay bale og pwede dito sa ilaha mao ilahang pamaagi. So mo na to additional na ako. Akong pangutana ma'am maka-cite ba kag sample or of discrimination sa mga IPs nga mao gyud basis sa law nga nakuan siya ba na create kay ako ilongga manggug ko. For me, kuan bitaw kaayo sa akong part kay sa mo ang community dili gyud ingon nga discriminate ang mga IPs. Wala na ko nakita nga giunsa na gyud sila. Mga gidown na gyud kay sila nga nakapahimo sa ilaha nga kuan bitaw. Special kayo kung atong kuan di ba kay sa height na to sa PNP. IPs o mga Muslim ang naay kanang pwede sila makakuha og waiver for height, di ba? O dayon murag na kuan ko ba nga special jud kaayo kay naingani din. Unsay na makasite pa kag sample nga pwede kanang bitaw makuha na nako kay murag kuan kay sa akong mind pa ba dili pa ko wala pa ko nakabalo nga unsa may basis nila nga nag-create din sila law nga ana unsay nahitabo ana bitaw ma'am. Salamat.
No, it doesn't need to be ako'y tubag na kanang it doesn't need to be nga kanang kinahanglan na adyo nahitabo nga discrimination. The discrimination, if we base it on the history sa mga IPs, ang discrimination magud sa una kay naadyo na sila sa mga mountainous region. So na ang education nila number one is not kanang dili sila doon sa education. So wala mga nakaskwela then i-degrade sila kanang mga degrading sa mga tao nga in-term nila nga subanon then mga taga-bukid mga inana nga discrimination. But in reference to your question ma'am Biako, kanang I think it depends on the department or agency kung unsa ilang buhaton na kay ang government kuan man through the NCIP pag create sa NCIP dira na ni boom ang kanang grabe jud ang protection sa IPs karon like pati ang imong ingon nga na mga height waiver inana. So sa imong pagkailongga mas naa sa mga inana pud nga part nga gihimo pud sa katong mga community sa Ilonggo community kay supposedly appeal man sila. So if you want an example kung ana wala man ko'y mahuna-hunaan. Ako personally, I am an IP, I am a Subanen. My mother is a full-blood Subanen. So this report is really close to my heart. So kanang sa 1987 Constitution, naman yung tatanan, Equal Protection Clause. So basically, kung karon makita nimo diri sa Zamboanga del Sur nga very empowered ang mga IPs, it depends on the government kung unsaon nila pag-empower ang kuan. So, mauna na akong idea for that. Basta na ma-add sila.
Muad lang pud unta ko gamay kay I think ang gistorya ni Ma'am Biako is under katarungang pambarangay. So pareha sa akong gistorya kaganina, ang katarungang pambarangay is kung naa man gud unta ang core man gud sa katarungang pambarangay is kung naay magsilingan or residents of the same city or municipality nga naglagi og buot. So ayha sila mo ato sa court para daw makasave ang atong government, isettle sa sila sa barangay. And then naamon gud na siya sa under sa ato ang local government code and also naapod siya sa IPRA law nga ang kanidong mga IPs kung para sa ilahang settlement pwede sila nga dili sa mo diretso sa ato ang punong barangays. So pwede nga mag-settle lang sila sa ilahang leaders or ana. So dili man ingon nga kinahanglan jud na discrimination para i-settle sila siguro. Kung naalong jud any conflict bisag unsa pa ang hinungdan basta IP sila, pwede sila nga magpasettle sa ilang leaders instead nga mo diretso sila sa ilang punong barangay. Kay tungod marginalized sector man daw sila, so gitagaan sila ana nga right and privilege. Thank you.
Sige ma'am.
Thank
Bale,
you.
ma'am Alaysa, dili to siya about discrimination nga problem ma'am ha. Kining
Oo,
conflict lang to between IPs ang akong
Oo,
sabot. So, naka-separate tong additional information ako sa akong question.
Okay.
Dayon, salamat sa pagtubag. So, wala gud mo'y kuan pud no nga basis gud no nga kuan kining na i-create na siya nga law for ang bale kuan siya kaning sa voices sa IPs nga nangusog mao hinungdan nga nag-create na siya na law dayon gipangusgan sa
Basically,
government
ma'am,
dayon, no?
yeah, basically, ma'am, ang number one reason ay ang 1987 Constitution kana sa Equal Protection Clause nato sa mga na-identify ang IPs as part of marginalized nga society. So, mao na dayon na ang pag-create sa NCIP na IPRA law. So, dira na ni sulutanan mga rights and privileges.
Yeah.
Okay, sir. Salamat kayo.
Okay, thank you Sir Rio and Ma'am Eliza. Thank you Ma'am Biako. Dili man pud siya kinahanglan jud nga kanang sa tuwa nga makuha nga gina-discriminate gid sa nga kanang literal jud kay nga nagid sa atong atubangan. Kanang sa una pa kabalo naman jud ta nga ang mga IPCs nagpuyo sa mga suksok nga lugar. So dili sila madali mabot sa education, sa health, kanang unsa pa nga mga services sa government. So, mao ni siya para mas mapaplastar, mas mapadali ang mga proyekto nga para nila o para maka-uplift pud sila isa ning RA 8371 na gibugta sa atong government. Hinaot na tubag ma'am ang pangutana.
Okay, salamat.
So karon ako ang nang ihatag sa ato ang next reporter. Yan, salamat
Ma'am Biako, ahat ka ng kapitan dapit, ma'am.
Kumalarang, sir.
Okay, naadjing mga subanil din ha.
Daghan sa sir.
You can PM me for your questions na lang para di ka malugay. Kung nakay i-clarify sa
okay.
IPs.
Okay ra, sir. Salamat.
So, ako nang next. Nakapatay time, Ma'am Zen. Okay pa? Wait pa mo, guys.
Okay pa mo.
Yes,
Laban lang,
ma'am.
sir.
Live
pa, ma'am.
Okay, so,
Padayon, sir.
Kinsa pa?
after na po na isa si Ma'am Elsa na dayon, then wala na. Mubo na sad kayo niya ang topic. Ma'am?
Iwason lang nato mong duha.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you. So, thank you so much na na-learn na nato no ang mga rights and privileges or ang especially about the indigenous people. So, ang report actually pagkita nako kay mura jud kog nakuha part sa mga for your information, ako isa ko ka ID sa Subanan. Akong mama is a full-blooded na Subana. Jud. So, close po ni siya sa ako ang heart kay pag undergrad sa nako about Subanan sa dang akong na thesis. Pagtuan kay ang Lapuyan is known to be the culture-friendly municipality sa Zamboanga del Sur. Kami ang nagdala sa kanang Subanan culture dun sa Zamboanga del Sur, basically. So, ang akong topic is madungog na ko ninyo, guys.
Madungog,
Yes,
sir.
dungog na, sir.
Sir.
Okay. So, ang akong topic is equity and development. Nakita ninyo? Napakoy picture nila.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Maraming mo nga IP jud ko na ako'y tribal costume. Char. Anyway, saan na ni? So, na ko pag-play. Okay na. So, akong topic is about equity and development. So, nasabtan na nato tanan ang history of transition sa indigenous people, sa representation of indigenous people in our country. Not necessarily diri na kita sa ato, but naapoy mga indigenous people sa mga mountainous regions sa Luzon. But best example lang ko kay naamon ta diri ron sa Zamboanga del Sur, and mas makarelate man ko na diri lang sa Zamboanga del Sur, especially ako mismo is a proud Subanen. So I think equity comes from the idea of moral equity, that people should be treated as equals. Based sa atong 1987 Constitution, no person shall be deprived of kanang life, liberty, and equal protection of the law. So maon dyan na number one nga basihan nga no natukod po na atay mga IPRA law nga create ang atong gobyerno, and at the same time na create po ang National Commission of Indigenous People, that is to protect and to provide equality and empower the marginalized societies, especially like Subanen, mga any other indigenous people na sa Pilipinas. So equity and development is also greater equity, means greater equity contributes to poverty reduction through potential beneficial effects on aggregate long-term development and through enhanced opportunities for poorer groups within the society. Government institutions should ensure equal opportunities for all individuals by promoting a level playing field both politically, economically, and the domestic and global arena. So sa giingon sa mga previous reporter nato, di ba, karon nowadays dili na jud ta kaingon nga marginalized or naa jud sa bottom line ang mga IP. Ako di jud ko musugot ko dana kay I am one of those person nga I believe I am an empowered IP. Jud nga ba kay daghan nag mga ni-graduate na ko na ako equal opportunities for sa tanan sa political, economic, kay di ba giingon sa previous reporter na anasad tay mga representative sa kada barangay, even sa kanang municipal level at sa city level. I don't know if naana po lang ubag, but naana tay mga IPMR man na sila gitawag, mga IPMR representative na members sa sanggunian, and they are more concerned on protecting and empowering the rights of our IP community, especially like Subanen and other, for example, for that matter. So there are three areas of considerable consensus of equity. Number one is equal life chances. So sa giingon pa ganina sa 1987 Constitution, there should be no difference in outcome-based factors for which people can be held responsible. So equal life chances meaning pwede, kung bisan pag IT ka, bisan pag taga-bukid ka, pwede ka mga-apply unsay mong ganahang trabahoon or any other kanang mga, kung pwede sa uban nga nung dili pwede pati sa mga IT school. So number two is equal concerns for people's needs. Some goods and services are necessities and should be distributed accordingly or solely to the level of the needs. And then number three is the meritocracy. Position in society and rewards should reflect differences in efforts and ability based on fair competition. So kanigi, isa po ni sa mga gikuan nato nga mga kuan sa equality kay syempre na sa unang panahon na mga discrimination kay porket IP ka or taga-bukid ka, well known man dyan ang mga inana nga discrimination sa una panahon o nag-i-empower dyan ang mga marginalized sector. So karon di paniguraduhan dyan sa itong mga ipelo nga na equal chances sa tanang mga buhaton pati na sa pag-eskwela, sa position sa work and others. And then there are 5 core priorities for address equity in the national levels. Number 1, kaning providing universal public services for fair treatment. So kani mismo public services sa una man good feeling sa mga IPs nga dili sila privilege aning mga services, especially if taas sila sa bukid. one of the reason might be nga kanang ang atong example ang geographical scenario nato kaya most of the IPs are living na sa mountainous area so dili kaayo masudlan sa mga services sa government. So karon na since ma-okay if ang atong panggobyerno is okay na naanatay mga saktong dalan, masudlan na jud na mapil na jud sa mga IPs nga pwede po sila and appeal naman jud sila ron sa mga beneficiary like especially kada mga 4Ks isa na nga mga IPs naka-benefit sana kay in fact pati sa PhilHealth ang PhilHealth gali disregard the issue of PhilHealth dapat PhilHealth for mga IP at first so daghan jud privileges ang mga IP na number 2 is target action for disadvantaged group isa na pud na and then social protection redistribution and challenging embedded power of imbalances. So basically, kani nga topic na to is nag-focus lang sa equality on everything, not only sa, as a people in general, pero di lang, karon example lang dyan ako ang sa IPs, kaya ang among report, ang main topic naman is more on the representation ng IP. How did equality or the equity in the development nga ang mga IPs karon na ano dyan sila yung development nga nahitap po. So that's all. Thank you. Salamat. All of our report.
Thank you, sir.
Ay, kajut lang. So, pag stop share, no? Okay na? Mamamayrat, makashare?
Stop sharing, sir.
Paki-stop sa sir.
Okay na. Thank you.
Man.
Kinsay mo sunod nga report,
Ma'am
sir?
Elsa.
Mamamayrat. Yours na.
Yes, okay. Wait lang. Kajut lang.
Sige, ma'am.
Okay na. Madungog na ko ninyo, ma'am and sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Wait sa kadalian. Nagkuhan pa. Loading. Mana lab. Ni?
Ma'am Elsa.
Okay, kajut lang. First time gud ni kuan og present. Kajut lang jud, sorry. Amanda Pete. Okay, can anyone kanang naay screen palihog kog share kay dili ko ka share sa akong screen. Seryo?
Asa, katulang slides, ma'am, ang imong gigamit.
Kato lang sir, kato lang. Then
Sige,
number
sige.
18 sir. Palihog
Okay,
lang
no
sir.
problem.
Thank you.
Okay.
Nansa man ni na something wrong sa akong slide diri. Number 18, sir.
Okay,
Pareho.
makita ninyo?
Makita na.
Okay na. Kana, number
Okay,
18.
good afternoon. Once again, good afternoon, everyone. Sorry kay sa delay. No, okay. Ang akong topic now is what causes inequity. No, kabalo na ta, what is equity no ni Sir Rio. Nga equity is comes from the equality sa moral equality. Now, what is inequity? Inequity is the quality of being unequal or uneven, lack of equality, lack of justice or unfairness. Now, what causes inequity? Inequity, the power imbalances in access to and interactions with key institutions and the policies they create and implement are not benign entities that aim to enhance welfare across society, but rather political entities that reflect existing political economic power structures within a society. Number one example is political. Access to or an involvement with these political structures and institutions is differential owing to inequitable power structures in societies resulting in political inequalities. These imbalances are in turn often reflected in the coverage and quality of social services such as health and education. So example in political is if kanang ang imong gisuportahan nga kuan nga politics kanang na for example wala na kadaog so supporter jud ka loyal jud ka nga supporter itong wala na kadaog so you cannot enjoy the health benefits and the education of that said politician nga imong gisuportahan so better nga dili jud ka mag-loyal sa imuhang politician no nga imong suportahan so that is one of the example of inequity so there is naay mahitabo nga unfairness in comes with that. Okay, next please.
Ken, agree ka anak Ken?
Ma'am?
Agree ka sa gingon ni Elsa nga inequity?
Depende,
Agree na lang sir para madali. Okay. Next is economic. Access to and involvement with these markets is differential owing to inequitable political, economic structures, socio-cultural norms, systems, and institutions in societies, resulting in inequality in the economic sphere. For example, where credit markets do not work perfectly, access to credit can be skewed towards those who have the wealth to enable them to offer collateral or those with better social connections with lenders. So, tinuod kung sample ani kung kanang daghan jud kay kag collateral, daghan kang pwede i-guarantor, so pwede ka nga makautang diha sa mga lenders, no? So, nadyo mahitabo nga inequality. So next is socio-cultural. This underpins societal structures and result in inequalities based on identities such as gender, in ethnicity, race, religion, and caste. For example, differential value for boys and for girls. So ang gisite ni example is about sa gender. So when we speak about the gender, no, kung male, female and male. So there is also inequity because some of the women's pares nako dili kabalo mo drive so no dili ta ma-enjoy so ang other food no nga kanang example is sa una nga mga nga culture is kanang ang babae na ara gyud sa balay no ang mama na gyud sa balay ang papa ra gyud ang manarbaho so there is inequity nga mahitabo tungod kay there is differentiate ang mga gender there is unequal so next is social
dapat equal naman
excuse me ma'am yes ma'am
Women's Month ra ba jud karong Monday?
Women's Month ra ba ron March 1
Kinahanglan
So,
equal na
Kinahanglan equal na ron, no? Dili na ta mo sundog atong last generation. Social
Layo na dito.
exclusion. Next is social exclusion. Social exclusion is defined as the process through which individual or groups are wholly or partially excluded from the society in which they live. Involves understanding development as a historical process and exploring the character of different forms of social chains associated. Social exclusion kanang feel nimo nga wala ka na belong, no? Kanang for example, ako ning na experience sa una because when I was in elementary, kanang murag ko wala bitaw ko kay friends, murag wala ko na belong sa group. So I experienced this social exclusion. Mani makasay jud kog example ani kay kanang ako mga classmate is kuan sila kanang mga kwartaan ang anak sila mga kwartaan nga family, but then ako kanang pobre lang pero ako yung na kuanan karon nga dili jud na dapat nato nga i-set ang atong mind ana, no? Because no, it should be equal. Equal ang gusto nato nga mapairal na government. So next is adverse incorporation. Adverse incorporation is negative and indifferential incorporation into the state, the market, or civil society as a result of limited power and agency. If it captures the ways in which localized livelihood strategies are constrained by economic, social, and political relations and driven by equalities of power. So incorporation kanang mga establishments, private establishments, no, na sila'y daghang mga strategies about sa unsaon paglambo sa ilahang negosyo. So next please.
Hansa, kasyot. Ibalik ragot tong adverse incorporation.
Okay. Adverse incorporation is negative and different incorporation into the state, the market, or civil society as a result of limited power and agency. It captures the ways in which localized livelihood strategies are constrained by economic, social, and political relations and driven by inequalities of power. Ma'am.
Supporters, mga kauban ni Elsa, kindly help in explaining adverse incorporation. Dili kaya ko convince sa explanation.
Adverse incorporation. Anyone can support any explanation? Can cite an example? Ma'am Kanoy. Sa moment to kung pagsabot good adverse incorporation kanang limited lang ang power ba sa agency?
No, I think kanisa nga kwan, it is a negative and differential incorporation in the state. For example, katong giingon mo ganina, if ever ang localized livelihood dato, for example, mauna ang giingon bitaw nga ang unsay livelihood dato sa, for example, isa ka LGU na sila yung mga livelihood programs na pwede makuan pero constrained sila economically, walay kwarta, so dili sila kabalo unsaon pag dili mapalambo bitaw ang kuan ang ilohang livelihood programs na naadya kay constrained economically and ang political relation. For example lang ni kung ang isa ka LGU is not really in good political relations sa higher rank niya within the province. So, luoy kaya ng LGU in terms of ay inequalities may tabo in terms of power kaya ang maapektuhan ang ilang mga localized livelihood kaya ang mga programs not supported by the provincial government or sa national government for that matter. O ipagsabot na pa lang sure.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay, very good. Proceed. Una mga inequality lagi kay san pag moingon nga everything is being implemented fairly. Dili gyud na sa ika LGU, kabalo jud ka, especially that you are the administrator. Yun na pretty well nga, kanlo ang lagana, pero ang role sa mundugan mo gina imuhang pagkano pabor, di ba?
Yes, ma'am.
Wala nga, lagi mga negative impact.
Murag political reality.
Ito na state, mura ba, pareha manggunan ng social exclusion. Maaari na. Or should we give more people to them? That is the reality of politics. Ito ako,
Okay, next please, sir.
sakitan ba ko ba? Mo siya ila po ko gamay no. In my case, the isang wife ang ko, dili ko personally nga ako gid ang public servant sa elected public official. Pero kanibang among mga pilingan diri nga halos tanan na lang deserve na mo sila pero pag sa election kay nagpa-member atong hunahuna nila nga mas dagko sila madawat. Ana bitaw so sometimes sakit because kita manggod kung silingan regardless of unsa imong political choice kay silingan di na silang tabangan sige na ka magunahon nila o magbalos pa pero sila kung imuhan ng iniwan ng ilangang kanang loyalty na wala but dili man tanan namang you loyal to you and to your family pero kanang uban nga mga kwarta ra gyud yun na mas mapili gyud na sila dito sa sila hapong nahunahunaan nga mas maka-benefit sila so sakit siya hunahunaan. Okay, proceed.
Yes, ma'am. But dili tanan jud ma'am, tinuod jud ka ma'am. Next is patterns of inequality reinforcing each other. Poor people often experience inequities across a number of dimensions and through various different processes.
But it's not only poor people. It's like ang rich. Maka-experience gyapon na siya. Dili lang in terms of financial.
Yes, ma'am.
So, proceed.
So, through intergenerational transmission, high dependency ratios limit children's human development and socialization, and cost may mean that younger siblings may not be well nourished or able to complete secondary school. So kaning intergenerational transmission, so magka-high man gud ang ato ang siyempre magkataas ang atong tuition, then mahitabo ang mga katong nasa ubos nga mga family is dili na makapa-eskwela silang mga anak in the college, no, hantod na lang sa elementary or hantod na sa high school. So that is reality nga mahitabo karon tungod kay sa atong economy. So that is intergenerational transmission. Next please, sir. So there is equality and versus equity. These concepts of inequity and equality coincides in places, as some types of inequality are in fact inequity, such as unequal life chances, political inclusion, unequal educational coverage, and health inequalities. Equality refers to equal opportunity at the same levels of support for all segments of society. Equity goes a step further and refers offering varying levels of support depending upon the need to achieve greater fairness of outcomes. So makita na to sa illustration ang difference between equality and equity. Ang equality, yan ang the same sila og support, no? Bisan ang butang na to middle class, low class, o high class. So the same support from the government. While in equity, ang katong pinaka-low class, so more support depende sa ilang needs. So para mo level sila sa high class. So that ends my report. Thank you and good afternoon.
Thank you. Group 9. So it's your turn now to ask questions. Ano na lang kinsa may mo facilitate sa paghatag og question kay ako lang mo tawag og kinsay man sir.
Tahon na lang na ako ang question, ma'am. Then magtawag na lang ta para mas madali.
Sige, Beth.
Sige. The first question is, give at least one cause of inequity.
May I call on Miss Gladys Silva? Papa si Gladys. Gladys Silva. Anara.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Can you answer the question of Philippine?
Yes, ma'am.
Give ma'am at least one cause of inequity.
Wait lang, ma'am. Cause of inequity? Oh, wait.
Yes, ma'am.
My gosh. Ano, ma'am?
Ma'am? Naputol ka, ma'am. Ma'am Gladys.
Can you please, pardon, ma'am?
Ma'am, give at least one cause of inequity po.
Hello? Ma'am?
Hello? Hello, ma'am.
Hello,
Cause of
ma'am.
inequity. Hinungdan sa inequity.
Okay.
Ma'am, can I help?
Inequity, ma'am, or equity?
Inequity.
Okay, ma'am. Okay.
Rose, are you willing to answer? Since ito ganito.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Rosel?
Ma'am, pwede mo
Yes,
answer?
ma'am.
Isa man, si Rosel sa.
Yes, can I answer, ma'am? The one causes of inequity is political.
Political.
Political access to an involvement, yung binigay nila kanina, ma'am.
Okay.
And the
Access
other
to
one
an
is the power
involvement.
imbalance.
O, isa raman. Isa ra
So,
gihang
isa
niya,
lang,
no?
ma'am. Oo.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
What made it a cause of inequity?
Pwede ako, ma'am.
Christian? Kirby. Okay, Kirby. Naka-answer
Ah.
na magkaganina, Kirby.
Murag mo share lang po ko
Share lang
sa
ka.
political, ma'am.
Sige. Pero
For
ang makadawat
example,
sa criminal si Rosel.
yes, ma'am. Naka-source ang political, like for example,
Ang
yes,
load
ma'am.
ba?
Let's just say political inclusion, ma'am, like politically connected ka sa to that politiko, napoy uban nga dili ka connected ana politiko. So naay mga services na sa government nga kung dili ka connected sa ilaha, dili ka ka-avail. Di mama, for example, sa kuha, ma'am, nga,
Okay, example lang na ganina. Si Elsa or isa to report ana. Ikaw Elsa no? Na kung
Yes,
dili ka
ma'am.
ba
Una po yung example.
kanang
ikaw ba-
reality gyud na siya, ma'am. Nahitabo gyud na siya sa mo, ma'am.
imbalances are in turn often reflected in the coverage and quality of social services such as health, education, unsa pa diha, mga favors.
Lagi ma'am,
Okay.
yes ma'am,
Yes.
sa health bitaw ma'am, example yun siya nagtabo sa mga ma'am nga, kung dili ko employed ato nga para politiko, dili may ka-avail sa private room sa usa ka hospital ma'am. So tungod ato, kay connected man ko ato nga politiko, so na ako sa political inclusion, appeal ko sa dali ra
These
maka-avail
under
sa services. Pero katong mga wala, muna siya nga source siya sa inequity ang political inclusion ma'am. Mura po to siya ko ma'am. Thank you.
Hello, ma'am.
Okay. Ano ka?
Si Gladys, ma'am. Kanang, pwede pa ma-answer?
Sunod na lang ang question.
Ah,
Befilin, may give
Yes,
your
ma'am.
price for sale.
Yes, ma'am.
Survey, yan ang tawag ng bati.
Yes, ma'am. Tagaan to siya price, ma'am.
So thank you, ma'am.
Next question, Befilin.
Okay, the next question would be NCIP stands for what? Kanidali
Okay,
education.
Gladys. NCIP.
National Commission on Indigenous People, ma'am.
Wala na.
Perfect. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay, next.
Okay, next question po. In your own understanding, based on your understanding, what is Indigenous Peoples' Right Act? Kinsay mo answer, ani, ma'am?
Indigenous People's Right Act. Asuero's Passion. Napa si Eros?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am. Indigenous People Right Act of 1997, an act to recognize, protect, and promote the rights of indigenous cultural communities, indigenous peoples, and even creating a national commission or indigenous people by establishing implementing mechanism, appropriating funds, and for other purposes, ma'am.
Okay, what is the particular Republic Act? What is the number?
Republic Act number 8371 of 1980.
Thank you, Eros. Okay na, Befilin. Proceed to next question.
Yes, ma'am, Sir Ken. Basin apa kay question dira, sir? Wala na kay question, sir? Sir Ken? Sir Ken Rio. Marig na siya pang Miss Universe na question, ma'am.
So, Befilin.
Yes, ma'am.
Si Eros, ikaw na bahala sa iyang prize.
Sige, ma'am. Sure, ma'am. Please lang po PM sa number sa kakan. Pero murag wala naman siguro yung question si Sir Ken, ma'am. Thank you so much for everyone.
Ano po tayo, no? So, thank you, Group 7 and Group 9. So, next meeting, I hope that Group 8 will be able to prepare the reports, Group 8 and 10. Thank you for this afternoon session. I would like to thank everyone for being resourceful and for rendering a very well-explained and very clear reports. Thank you for all your participation.
Salamat, ma'am.
Requesting Group 9 to lead the closing prayer.
Wala na
Okay. Okay, let us pray.
Nakamute ka, Ma'am Elsa.
Father, in the name of Jesus, thank you very much, Lord, sa wonderful afternoon nga nahuman na jud ang among report. Salamat kay sa giya, sa knowledge, Lord, sa imong gi-impart sa mga Ginoo. Ini mong gipasalamatan pinagi ni Ginoong Hesus sa mong Diyos ug manuluwas. Amen.
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 Amen. Thank you.
Amen.
Hindi na
Thank
ko
you, ma'am.
Amen.
else.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, ma'am.
Salamat, ma'am.
Thank you,
Bye,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, ma'am.